Okay, Ricky, before you, all right, that's okay. Where were we on? Do you remember what paragraph we were on? Were we on an ascending one-time human personality?
Okay, I'm going to start and then we find the paragraph.
Sure.
Okay. Today, March 7th, 2024, it's our 46th meeting, reading Urantia book with Heidi. We keep reading paper 112, Personality Survival, section 2, the self. Hopefully, we are going to start reading the third section, the phenomenon of death. 今天是第46次与海蒂读玉书。我们继续读112篇人格的续存，第2节，自我，有可能会开始读第3节，死亡的现象。Okay, let's find where we are.
Okay.
I think we have like 8 paragraphs to go for the section 2. So it's should be around
in time, maybe that one in time.
yes.
Thinking,
Yeah,
thinking,
we are
thinking
right.
leads to wisdom.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And hello everyone. Yeah, as Ricky said, we're finishing 112. The personality survival today. We're at the end of it, and then we're gonna zoom into section 3 of paper 112. As Ricky just said, the phenomenon of death, and that'll be very interesting. I'm sure everyone wants to know what happens to us after we die. And there's a lot of rumors going around in the world, but this will tell us the true story. So hang on, sit on the edge of your seats and hang on. You'll soon know the biggest answer to the biggest mystery in all of life. So yeah. And then Ricky, I thought we might take just take a stab at the one paragraph that we got stuck on about the supreme. I had a thought about it. We might go back to it because there was one where we sort of gave up on, and I've been thinking about it. I think it makes sense to me now. So we might go back to that after, but let's just get started. Okay, so I'll start reading. Who's do we know who's gonna? Oh, hello, Shenli. Hello, Anne. Hello, Eva. Do we know who? I don't want to give all my attention to Eric and ignore everyone else.
No, you didn't.
He's the prodigal son. Do you? Oh, do you? You probably don't get that joke. In English, there's we have and I'll let you translate. We have 1,000 expressions, and most people don't realize that 80% of them come from the Bible.
对，他就跟大家打招呼，然后就是他说对，我不能把那个我的注意力全都放在 Eric 身上，我还要跟申丽啊、跟艾娃呀、其他的伙伴打招呼。他就说到这个名字，开一个玩笑，然后他就说到80%的人名，这在西方都是出自圣经。
So I called Eric the prodigal son to explain why I was giving him all the attention, and I'll tell you the story. It's a very short story of it's a great story. It's a Bible story, and I'll tell you the story of the prodigal son right now so you can understand.
对，他就是要给大家讲一个圣经里边的故事，来以此说明为什么把 Eric 叫做 prodigal son。
Yes. So I don't even know what the word prodigal means, but everyone just knows the prodigal son.
就是浪子回头，浪子的故事，圣经里边。
So a rich man had 2 sons, and one worked and worked for him and worked in the field and worked in the house and helped him with his business and finished school and did everything right. He was the perfect son. He was a great son. He was a beloved son. The other son took his father's money, went off, partied and partied and partied, kept going, drifted away, did drugs, drank whatever people did in those days, and didn't come back for years.
就是圣经当中有个浪子回头的故事呢，就是这个妇人呢有2个儿子，大儿子呢就是兢兢业业的，就是照管父亲的产业，各方面都表现良好，非常省心。小儿子却不务正业，然后呢，并且什么坏事什么就是就是好的事儿都做，然后并且到最后还把自个的家产呢早早的让父亲给他，然后他就拿着钱财就走了，出家了，不是出门去挥霍去了。
It broke the heart of the father. He thought he thought his son was lost forever. He'd never see him again.
当然是老父亲非常伤心呢，他以为他就是永远的，就是失去了这个儿子。
One day, walking along there was a long path to the house. One day, there comes the son, the prodigal son, walking up the path. He's back. He doesn't have any money, but he's very, very sorry for what he did. And he's back and he's going to make a new life.
但是有一天呢，这个小儿子就回来了，他对自己的以前的所作所为表示道歉，就是回到父家来了。
So the father is so happy to see him. He's crying, he's hugging him, and he calls and then that night he calls all of his neighbors, everyone in the town, and he has a big welcoming party, a big celebration because his son is back.
这个父亲呢非常狂啊，上去又哭又拥抱又亲吻的，然后当天晚上呢召集所有的邻人来就是庆祝，召集大家来吃饭来庆祝他的小儿子回来。
So then the other son goes, "What are you celebrating him for? He took your money. He disappeared. He never said goodbye. He broke your heart. You thought he was dead. He was gone for years. I was here every day helping you, working, doing everything right. I wanted to go party. I never partied. You never had a celebration for me. How come you're celebrating for him?"
这大儿子就有点不高兴了，他就是说，你看他给你帮你挣钱了吗？他就是让你那么你外边也不会没有信息他每天帮助你料理这个家里的里里外外你为什么给他举办这样盛大的就是 party 来祝贺？
And the father said, "Because I thought he was lost, and now he's back."
父亲就跟他解释说：“哎呀，我以为他永远的失去他了，可是现在他回来了。”
So that's why I'm calling Eric the prodigal son.
他就开玩笑嘛，所以给Eric 称为浪子浪子回头，就是特别令人兴奋的所以他就是拿这个来进行一小小的一个玩笑式的一个类比和回顾。
And you guys, we come every week. She never gets excited when we're here.
然后其他人就说我们每周都来，但是你们都没有像这个 Eric 来这么高兴对，就是类比那个老大嘛，大哥兢兢业业。
Is this analogy correct?
Is what?
Is this analogy correct? Because it's not like I don't want to come. I just have another course.
对对，他
No,
就是
no,
开玩
that's
笑。
why, that's what's so funny about it is
Mhm.
that it's really not correct, but it's
Yeah, Eric listened to
you're
every of your
you're
session.
not the prodigal son. You didn't run off and take all my money. No, you're
Yeah, I try to come back every week. I just could not.
对，他只是时间不方便，但是他其实几乎把我们以前的都听了。Yeah, he listened almost every session of our recording.
I know. He's not the prodigal son,
Mhm.
but it's a great. Wait, hold on. It's a great story because, in a way, it's really not fair. You're celebrating the bad guy, right? And yet it makes perfect sense because, of course, you're happier to see the one you thought was lost. So the point of the story is that things aren't necessarily fair, but that's not how life is. But you just accept it the way it is. You don't complain that your father is happy. That you should be happy he's back too. But it would make but you can understand where they're saying, wait a minute, you're celebrating the guy who screwed up instead of the people who did right. But so you can totally understand it. And that's why it's such a great story.
对，就是这个故事的内涵哈，就在于说，这个生活并不在于说什么公平，就是没有公平，生活就是本来就是应该为这个失而复得的而高兴。这个大长子其实也应该跟他的父亲同喜，就是也应该为自己的弟弟失而复得感到高兴。你不能说因为你自己做的比人家好，然后就觉得好像你定罪别人做的不好，而因此觉得弟弟得到特别的这种的爱，而觉得就是有点嫉妒啊。生活不是关于公平不公平的。
But it's also a story about God because basically, if you do everything right, you're going to go to heaven, and we'll read about that today. But if you do everything wrong and you come back, you'll go to heaven too.
对，这个就是不是说你所有的事情都做对了，然后你就去天堂，而是说你可能做错了，但是呢，你还是回头了，也是可以去天堂的。
And God will celebrate when you come back. No matter how bad you were, God will actually celebrate when you decide to come back.
对，当你决定回头的时候，这个神是要庆祝的。那当你对，就是这是一个非常值得庆祝的好事。
It may not be really fair, but it's really a good news for all of us sinners.
对，不一定是这是公平的，但是对我们打引号罪人来说是一个好消息，因为我们喜欢定罪我们自己嘛。
Good news for us.
对，是对我们这些罪人来说是好消息。
Okay, I'm going to start reading. In time, thinking leads to wisdom. Oh, I think we read this. And wisdom leads to worship. In eternity, worship leads to wisdom, and wisdom eventuates in the finality of thought. That's a short paragraph.
对，这个谁来读中文翻译的部分，就是非评论的中文翻译的部分。
要不还是我来读吧。
OK，
在时间中，思维带来智慧，智慧带来敬奉；在永恒中，敬奉带来智慧，智慧最终归结于思想终局。OK, Heidi.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And So we know that here thinking leads to wisdom and wisdom leads to worship. That's easy to understand. That's how things are here.
他说这个第一句呢还是很好理解的，在时间中思维带来智慧，智慧带来敬奉。
So they're telling us that in eternity, it's just the opposite. Worship leads to wisdom, and wisdom eventuates in the finality of thought. So they're saying that in eternity, you're not thinking. What we would be with the thinking that we do here, we're just worshiping all the time. Our natural worship is the natural way of thinking in eternity. That's the first part.
但是在永恒当中，正好是有点相反的。敬奉呢，就是带来思考。
We can't. I don't think we can even breathe. I don't even think we can open our eyes without feeling worship for God when we're eternal beings.
What do you mean by we?
I mean, I'm speaking metaphorically because we don't breathe the way we breathe here or open our eyes, but we have spiritual eyes and we breathe probably in some spiritual way. And I'm saying the very act of consciousness is to feel some kind of worship for God when we're eternal beings. When we're in it, when they say in eternity, they mean when we're very, very high level spiritual beings, very evolved, very spiritual beings.
对，它的 eternity 这个地方其实是指的是我们都是进化了非常高的一个存有，灵性的存有。对，就是我们呼吸啊，张开我们的眼睛啊，其实都是灵性的意识的活动的一部分。
So one thing the Urantia book teaches us is that everything here is like a kind of reflection of greater things to come. There's usually a kind of a correlation.
对，我们现在经历的一切都是更大的实相的一个反应。
So what we do here, the thinking we do here is it's sort of like we do the best we can here. We're not really spiritual beings yet, but we do the best with what we have. The best we can do here is think all the time. We're just learning how to worship. We don't really know how yet, but we know how to think. We have mind and we think all the time. We think from the moment we wake up until we go to sleep, and then we dream, which is a kind of thinking in our sleep. So we're really thinking all the time here. And
对，我们在这个维度，我们是思考，似乎是我们与生俱来的一个功能。我们对信念，从我们对清醒的一刻开始，一直都在思考，这个念头不断。即使入睡呢，我们也那个心识也在动，就是也在思考，也在想。
if our physical minds are working well, we're thinking on the material plane.
对物质这个层面呢，我们这个物理心智就是一直在起作用。
If our spiritual minds are working well, if we're conscious, which we will be, on the spiritual planes, we'll be worshiping. That's the spiritual counterpart to thinking is worshiping.
但是在灵性的心识呢，灵性的心智的那个意识领域里边呢，灵性的领域当中就是敬拜，就是它的灵性心识的，那个表现呢，就是敬拜。
And here on this plane, in this life, the more we think, the deeper we think, the more wise we become, the wiser we get.
在我们现在的物质层面，就是你越多的思考，更深的思考，那么你就越来越有智慧。
But they're telling us that on the spiritual plane, when we're high level spiritual beings, the more we worship, the wiser we get.
而在这个灵性的层面呢，我们就是越越思考what's your high level
High level,
worship?
just extremely, very, advanced spiritual beings.
And then worship, more worship, and then more what?
So they're telling us that even though we'll be 1,000 times wiser when we're spiritual, high level, advanced spiritual beings than we are now, what they're telling us that is we'll keep getting wiser and wiser. There's no limit to wisdom. They're telling us that you're always getting wiser. Here we get wiser by thinking. There we get wiser by worshiping.
对，在灵性的层面，你敬拜的越多，你就是越那个变得越明智，变得越有智慧。
So Heidi,
Because we're not.
Heidi, I have one question.
Sure.
So the definition for worship for moral being and for spiritual being, are they the same or they are different?
The word is the same, but we don't understand that level of worship yet. We know a little bit about worship. They live in a state of worship. They don't think. They don't have brains the way we think. Their worship for them is thinking advances to worship. Right now, we just worship a little bit. Eventually, we'll worship all the time and we won't be thinking anymore. But worship will replace thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I just thinking like for us, right? What's the meaning of worship? It's like something like kind of like communicate with God, right?
With God?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's let Ricky translate some of this.
OK， 这 Eric 的问题是这个敬奉啊，到底是什么意思？在物质层面的敬奉、敬拜，跟在灵性层面、灵性的那个领域的敬拜到底有什么区别？然后，Heidi 就是说这个在灵性层面的敬拜是不是就是在灵性层面那个敬拜实际上是取代这个所谓思考的，就是在那个灵性层面思考就是敬拜。
So worship is a little bit hard to explain. Many people might explain it differently. Many people do worship. So I'll try to explain it, but first of all, it's like prayer, but it's more than prayer. We can start there.
对，这个我们大概就是现在很难想象在灵性层面的敬拜是什么样子。那么，并且不同的人对这敬拜啊、敬奉啊这个词的理解也不同。他就先从说啊，你可以先从想象，就是说敬拜有可能有点像祷告那个样子。
Prayer could be something you read or something you say. You may say the same prayer every day. Worship isn't like that.
对，那个敬奉者、敬拜者有可能每天读一些祷词啊，或者说一些祷告语啊。你可以把敬拜想成这个样子。
Now, a more casual meaning would be, people will say that you go to church to worship. So they'll call it a worship service. So that is the real reason that people go to church is to worship. Whether they all worship at church or not, I don't know. But that's the real reason to go to church is to worship.
更松散一点的意义呢，就是，有些人呢去教会就是为了来参加他们的敬拜的服务，就是你去教会的目的就是去敬拜。
So worship could here's some things that might help explain it. It's like a deep it can be like a state of intense sincere prayer or meditation.
Or just a faith. In
或
the
者提
faith.
到一个，我先把它翻完。它这个就是一个很深的一种状态当中有很强烈的一个忠诚的，祷告。
Yeah, I'll come back to that question in a second, Shenley. So it can be very deep, sincere prayer, or it can be just a state of meditation where you're feeling the universe or feeling God's presence. That's a state of that can be a state of worship.
对，或者很强烈的感受到神的同在，也可以是一种敬拜。
It can be a profound state of gratitude.
也可以是一个很深的感恩的状态。
It can be as simple as just wanting to thank God and feel, not just thank God, but feel gratitude for God.
对，就是对神表达一种感到非常深的一种感恩的状态。
So the reason it's more than faith is because faith is a noun. Faith is a thing. Worship is an action. It's a verb. So you don't have worship. You do worship. It's something you do. Faith is something you have.
这个信仰呢，它就是一个名词，但是呢，敬拜它是一个动词。
But you do need faith to worship, or it certainly helps.
当然你需要信仰，然后才能敬拜。
So worship would be okay. Here's a good one. Whenever people would see Jesus in all his glory, when like maybe whenever he made a blind man see or he cured a leper, that person would immediately fall at his feet in a state of worship.
对，当这个耶稣在地上的时候，这个他医治好了瞎眼的，然后使那个麻风病人得医治的时候，这些被医治的人都会，匍匐在他的脚下，那个进入一种敬拜的状态。
Many near-death experience people, when they see God in all his glory, God or Jesus with all of this light coming from them, and sometimes they're very big or they're very majestic. Very often they fall at their feet and just in a state of worship.
那在濒死体验当中见到神的荣光的人，也是马上就在他的那种的这种这么伟大的一个状态当中的陷入一种敬拜的状态。
Now, other times people have conversations with God and Jesus just like a friend, and they're not in a state of worship. So it's not always that way.
那有可能这个神向他显现像一个朋友一样，他也不一定陷入那种敬拜。
But when you see a God-like being and you fall on the ground and put your hands down and you want to actually bow down on the ground before them, that is definitely worship.
对，当你见到一个像神一样的人物，你马上就是那个匍匐在地，然后就是那种的状态，就是一个敬拜。
Maybe sometimes you could be thinking about God and all of a sudden you could be overcome with a feeling of God's love and God's power and God's greatness, and you could be in a state of awe or feel embraced by love, and that would be a state of worship. So there's many states of worship, I would say.
或者你就是在一种你那个情景下被神的爱啊、全能啊、那个伟大所征服而感到敬畏，那个也可以进入一种敬拜的状态。
啊，那这样的话，我感觉我没有这种敬拜的感觉，平时对神，对任何高的存有没有任何，好像没有这种敬拜的感觉。
它是指的在这个，在我们这三维世界，可能对这个什么，可能就我觉得在永恒当中的那个敬拜不是这样的。他刚才描述的这些状态，大概是我们物质界的人，因为对灵性界的这个朋友，然后感到一种距离感，然后有
对对，
非常
就是好
的感恩
像有某一种高高在上的，然后我们
啊。
必须匍匐在地，仰望他这种感觉，这种我是从来没有过的。
对，我觉得这个就变成说，对大家对敬拜或是的意义，就像他可能比较偏那种崇拜，可是我也听过，就是有人讲说，所谓《月兰下之书》里面这种 worship，就是一种跟神是一种类似朋友的关系，不是
交流，
要
哦，对对，
communion，
我更
这种
多的是
交流，就是
交流。
你跟神交流是一种亲
对，
近、亲密交流的关系。也有人说，
确实
这才是
丰富的
真正所谓的敬拜，这样子。
一种更
对
亲
对对，
近、更
就是
更一
不带
体的，
不带宗教性的那种
对，
对对
不是说你崇
交流，
拜他，
对。
对。
那个
这种
海里讲的可
这种
能更是一
亲密的
种宗教
关系。
里边的，对宗教里边的一种敬拜。
What have you decided?
Well, we feel like, for our Asians, we don't kind of do have that concept or
Okay, but
image of worship in whatever you described. We may more, kind of feeling or conceptualize worship as communion with God.
yes, well, that is a kind that can, if you really feel a kind of communion with God, I would say that is worship.
对，他也同意，当你就是完全感到与神同在、那种临在的状态，也是应该是也是一个敬拜的一个状态。
But I mean, okay, I take that back. You can have a communion with God that's more of a conversation, and I would not call that worship. It's very good. It's closely related to worship. But worship is not really a conversation. It might have a little bit of a conversation, but it's more of a deference, an awe.
他说就是不光是一种跟神的对话，他更是敬拜，更还有一种敬畏的意思。
It's more of an awareness of how great God is and how much He's given you, and how it's like you could say it's like falling in love with God.
就是跟神，就是那个爱上了神的一个状态，一个意识。
It's okay if you don't know how to worship. We're in this life, we're just learning, we're just beginning the process, but the more evolved spiritual beings worship God all the time.
对灵性存有，基本上都对这个起源啊，对神啊，是一种敬拜的状态。
If you want to learn how to worship, just be quiet and listen and feel God's presence. That's a type of worship, definitely.
只是静静的感觉啊，就是聆听啊，感觉神的同在，也是一种敬拜。
But what they're telling us in this paragraph is that worship is going to be how we think. We're going to worship automatically when we're high spiritual beings. We'll worship the way we think here. If we're conscious, we'll be worshiping.
第二句这一段，第二句就是，我们在永恒当中，就是我们灵性存有了之后，大概敬拜就是一个常态吧，它是一个对思考的一个方式，就是敬拜。
And every time we worship, it's like when you have a deep, profound a conversation with someone or thinking session, and you realize things. You figure things out, and you say, aha. They call it an aha moment. When you finally get it, when a great realization, a major realization comes to you, that's how we get wise from thinking here on this plane. The same thing will happen in eternity. When we're high spiritual beings, we'll worship and we'll figure things out and we'll have realizations and revelations. As we worship, we're going to get wiser and wiser.
对，就是相当于跟神有很深的、很深远的一个对话，你就是达到一种证悟啊、体悟啊，得到启示啊、灵性的启示啊，你会变得更加的明智。
Okay, and then they say, in eternity, worship leads to wisdom, which we just explained, and wisdom eventuates in the finality of thought. So that's a very Urantia booky sentence.
而最后这句话，敬奉带来智慧，智慧最终归结为思想终局，这个非常的具有预言下之书的风格。
So eventuates it is from the word eventually. So they're saying it leads to, it becomes eventually the wisdom that you gain from all of your worship. Eventually it leads to the finality of thought. So I think what they're saying, I think with my thinking capacity, which is limited, says what what could finality of thought mean? It means it's replaced with something better. So you're no longer thinking, you're operating on a level that is beyond thinking. That's what they're saying.
对，从那个敬拜当中获得的智慧呢，会最终就是导向什么呢？导向就是思想的终局。这思想的终局，那意思就是，以更好的一种方式来替代了。就是那个时候那个想的不是我们现在这想，是更好的一种想，更高形式的一种想。
So when they tell us about the finality of thought, that means thought stops. The finality, it's final. You have a final thought, no more. And they're not saying you stop thinking and you sit around with a blank mind. They're not saying that. Obviously, something better happens. Like, I think it's probably you probably are finished thinking, and at that point you're knowing.
嗯哼，对你这个你就不想了，你停止想了。但是并不是说你那时候就是脑中一片，意识当中一片空白，你就是被一个更好的一种什么东西替代了。你完成了想，但是他想有可能就是被那个 knowing 被那个知道知晓理解这种东西所代替了。你不用想了，你想
You,
不用想。
we have to realize we merge with our thought adjuster very early on in our eternal career, very early on. The first life is like 2 seconds, and then we're in the Urantia worlds, and very soon we merge in the first, second, third. We're going to be alive for eternity. So very, very early on, we merge with our thought adjuster. So what happens after that? Well, we live for billion years after that. So what can happen? We're already half God. So we just become wiser and wiser and wiser. So what they're saying is you get to the point where you don't need to think anymore. You're tuned into the cosmic mind. You're tuned into God's mind. You're knowing. You're so wise that you're either knowing things, or you're thinking on such a high level that you can't even call it thinking.
Yeah, that's good illustration. 对，就是我们在我们的永恒生涯当中，很早期就跟信仰调整者融合了，就是在宰下世界的进入宰下世界不久，就跟信仰调整者融合了。那么从此以后啊，信仰调整者就是神跟我们总是在一起的，在永恒里。那么我们有神跟我们同在呢，就会变得更加的明智。然后呢，我们就慢慢的就是调频到那个宇宙心智。那么明智，以至于我们知道，我们知晓，然后呢，就是相当于在更高的层次上思考，不是一般意义的思考。
So well, we're spending a lot of time on this one sentence, but the going back to the first part of the sentence, it says, in time, here on this world, thinking leads to wisdom, and wisdom leads to worship. So we're talking about what worship is. Wisdom leads to worship. So we shouldn't focus too much on worship now. We should focus on wisdom, on becoming wise. And the wiser we become, when you become really wise, when your thoughts are really wise, then you start thinking with the cosmic mind. You start having more godly thoughts, and it will naturally lead, wisdom will naturally lead to worship. That's what they're telling us.
对，回到第一句呢，我们刚才讲了 worship，然后现在更多的讲那 wisdom 就是智慧。那么，智慧就是智慧怎么说呢？就是你智慧增加了，你越智慧了，你就是你的思考就更多的用这个宇宙心智去思考了，你更多的有神性的思考了之后，你就会越来越明智了，然后你就会导向更多的敬拜。
Ricky, it's kind of like, you probably have it in China too. I'm sure you have this expression. You hear it all the time here. The more you know, the less you know. The wiser you are, the more you know how little you know. You know that concept, right?
Yeah. 对你知道的越多，你知道的越少啊，就是你越明智呢，你越知道你知道的越少。
Well, that's true because everyone here is probably wise enough, just just wise enough to know, to have figured out that the wiser you get, the more aware you are of how little you know.
对，他说这个应该是比较容易知道的，明白的，就是至少在座的，这各位，大概也同意，就是你越变得越明智呢，你就是意识到你知道的很少。
You know, when you're really stupid, you think you know everything.
只有愚蠢的人才会觉得，诶，我什么都知道。
The less wise you are, the more you think you know.
你越缺少智慧呢，你越觉得自己知道的很多。
So if this is true, then as you get wiser and wiser, you're aware of how little you know and how much God knows. So it's naturally leading you to worship someone who knows everything.
嗯，呀，就是你这个越明智呢，你就会发现自己就是知道的太少了，就自然的你就会敬拜那个全知全能者。
So when you realize that you know very little, you're also realizing how much there is to know. You're also becoming aware of eternity, and eternity is God.
对，你越意识到自己所知甚少，你还需要知道的更多，然后你就开始就是那个寻找敬拜那个永恒，也就是神。
When you're 2 years old, you have no idea how much there is to know. You're not even thinking, you can't worship when you're 2 years old. It's not possible because you think you know everything.
当你2岁的时候，你没有办法敬拜的，因为你觉得你什么都知道。
So it makes sense that wisdom leads to worship.
他说可以理解为什么智慧引向敬拜。
Now, hopefully we won't spend a half hour on the next sentence, on every sentence.
他说希望下一段不要我们会花费了半个小时。OK，
The possibility of the unification of the evolving self is inherent in the qualities of its constitutive factors, the basic energies, the master tissues, the fundamental chemical overcontrol, the supreme ideas, the supreme motives, the supreme goals, and the divine spirit of paradise bestowal, the secret of the self-consciousness of man's spiritual nature. Okay, Shanley.
OK，统一进化中的自我的可能性是其构成要素的品质内在固有的。这些构成要素是基本能量、主控组织、基本化学的控制、至高理念、至高动机、至高目标，以及天堂赐予的神圣灵性、人类灵性本质的自我意识的奥秘。OK。
So that's pretty clear. The possibility of the unification of the evolving self is inherent in the qualities of the different aspects of yourself.
对，这一段大概比较容易理解哈。统一进化中的自我的可能性是其构成要素的品质内在固有的。
so, and then they're just listing the different, many different aspects of ourself. And the next paragraph explains this more. So I'll read it.
然后在剩下的这段的就是说进化中的自我的那些基本要素，然后下一段大概还会继续讲，还会继续读。
The purpose, so the last paragraphs we talked about the possibility of unification of the self, and then this paragraph says the purpose of path evolution is to achieve unity of personality through increasing spirit dominance, volitional response to the teaching and leading of the thought adjuster. Personality, both human and superhuman, is characterized by an inherent cosmic quality which may be called the evolution of dominance, the expansion of the control of both itself and its environment.
宇宙进化的目的是人格通过增加属灵支配，对思想调整者的教导和指导，做出更多自愿的回应，实现人格的统一。人格无论是人类的还是超人类的，都以固有的宇宙品质为特征。这种宇宙品质可以称之为支配的进化，即扩展对其自身及其环境的掌控。Okay.
Okay, so all right, this is just telling us that this is saying this is for human and superhuman. They're talking about the purpose of evolution. We all know that the whole universe is about evolution. From birth to death to rebirth on higher levels, we evolve and evolve and evolve and evolve. We never stop evolving, I don't think, because
就上一段说这个统一进化中的自我的可能性，这一段讲到这个宇宙进化的目的。我们生啊死啊，再升到更高的更高的层次，都是进化的，都是为了进化。
So we've been reading about personality, and we've read that humans, mortal beings, are not the only ones with personality. Spiritual beings, all beings have personality. So personality is the most important part of us, because that personality and our thought adjuster, they're combined because our thought adjuster shares our personality. When we merge.
不光是我们凡人有人格，那么灵性存有也有人格，所有的存有都有人格。人格是我们最重要的最重要的是特征。然后人格加上思想调整者，思想调整者是共享我们的人格的。
And as we read this book, we're constantly coming across the idea of, they're constantly explaining to us how we have all these different aspects of ourself. We have our mind, we have our thought adjuster, we have our emotions and feelings, we have our personality, we have our bodies, we have our souls. So they're constantly telling us that we're a complex organism. We're not just one thing. The personality unites all these different aspects of us, and that's what makes our identity. But they're constantly telling us through this book that what's very important is a balance. We have to find the right balance of all these aspects of ourselves.
嗯，对，我们这个自我的不同的方面呢，是不是身体啊、灵魂呐、什么情绪啊、个性啊，就是我们这个每个人个体都是一个非常复杂的一个有机体，这不同的方面构成我们的这个身份，这个不同的方面需要保持。这个人格的不同方面需要保持平衡。
So that's what they're talking about when they say the purpose of evolution is to achieve unity of personality. So first in the last paragraph, they're telling us about these different parts of ourself, the basic energies, the master tissues, the chemistry, the chemical overgo, and then our ideas, our motives, our goals, our spirit. That's what they're talking about in the last paragraph. In this one, they're telling us the purpose of evolution is to achieve unity of personality. A personality unifies these, but we want to be very well balanced. We want a perfect unity.
对，这个宇宙进化目的就是获得这个进化中的自我的统一性，就是把它给统一起来。就是这些要素包括基本能量啊、主控组织、基本化学的控制啊、理念啊、动机啊、目标，都需要在人格的这个下面要统一起来。这个是宇宙进化的目的。
And they're telling us what evolution is, and it's as we achieve unity of personality, we do this by they call it increasing spirit dominance, volitional response to the teaching and leading of the thought adjuster. Volitional response means we will. That's our choice. Volition is our will. So they're saying you use your personality, your will, to be led by your thought adjuster, your divine spirit, and that's how you evolve.
对，获得这个统一性，这个获得灵性的主导，就是意志性的，反应响应，就是用我们的自由意志去响应这个思想调整者或者圣灵的指导。
So there's two things. One is that is the purpose of evolution, to be led to use your will to be led more and more by your thought adjuster. That's the purpose, but it's also the way to evolve. So it's funny because it's what you're trying to do, but it's also how you do it.
对，既是目标又是手段，就是你用你的意志，然后决定来服从这个神性的指导，既是进化的目的，并且又是进化的途径。
So they're saying that, and this we talk about all the time also, they're saying personality, both human and superhuman, which I love. I love when we're all included in the same boat. You know, celestial beings, mortal beings, all personalities are talking about. Our characters are characterized by an inherent cosmic quality, which I love. So we've been talking about this a lot too, that we're not just physical beings. Every single personality has a deep inherent cosmic quality. We're completely tuned into the cosmic reality.
他非常喜欢那句话，就是人格呀，不管是这个人类凡人的还是超人的，都有人格啊。都有这个宇宙的属性，人格，所以人格就是一个宇宙的实相。
So they're looking at it in a very interesting way. They're saying that that from a cosmic perspective, they're looking at the cosmic quality in humans and celestial beings, or superhumans. They're they're saying that it can be called the evolution of dominance. So what does that mean? Dominance means assertiveness, strength. If there's two people and one is dominant, he's the stronger one, you know. So they're saying, so what is that, the evolution of dominance? Well, they're telling us the expansion of the control of both itself and its environment. So they're saying the personality is characterized by the inherent quality, which might be called the expansion of the control of both itself and its environment. So they're talking about the volitional response to the teaching and leading of the thought adjuster. So we use our will to be led by the thought adjuster, and that presence of God becomes dominant. The more we evolve, the more dominant the presence of God becomes within each being, and that is evolution.
就是随着进化程度的提高，不管是我们凡人呐、还是神界的存有啊，进化程度提高以什么为标准？就是以进化的，以控制的进化、支配的进化，就是越来越让神性，思想调整者那一部分就是来主导，这个就是一个进化的标志。
So now a lot of superhuman personalities don't have thought adjusters, but they're still characterized by a cosmic quality. And they're saying that as you evolve, in our case, we just have to learn to let our thought adjuster lead us. But for other beings, they also, we're using our will. We have to choose to do that. But for other beings, they have to choose to control their self and their environment, or the expansion of the control of both itself and its environment. It's about using your will to get more and more in control of how you think and how you feel and how you act. And then you achieve more and more dominance over the unity of yourself, of all these different aspects of yourself, and how you relate to your environment. You become a dominant being, an intentional being.
Yeah, OK， 就是那并不是所有的灵性存有都有思想调整者，那个他们没有像什么品质，不管是有没有思想调，我们呢有思想调整者呢，就是要更多的运用我们的自由意志来让神来主导，来获得这是自我的各个方面的统一，来其他的存有是不是也要扩展？就是共同的目标都是获得对自我、对这个环境的一种掌控、一种控制，就是一种控制性的、有意识的。
And then they're explaining, they're calling it volitional dominance, over the self and in the universe. And they're also comparing that to unity of personality and leading of the thought adjuster. So volitional dominance, I think the best way we should think of it is we would call that willpower. That's what we would call it here, willpower.
有意识的掌控，就是可以或者是 另外一个词就是意志的全能。
When we learn how to control our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, we become dominant over that's what they call by being dominant over your environment. You take control. You decide how you're going to be. You don't react to your environment. The more you act, the more the environment reacts to you.
不是有意识的，前面 volitional 应该是意志的掌控，就是意识的全能，就是你更少的就对环境反应react， 而更多的是行动，就是你自己的利用你自己的自由意志的那种行动，这是对环境的一种掌控，而不单纯的是反应 react。
So it says next, it says an ascending one-time human personality. Oh, okay, Shenli, this I'm reading now. An ascending one-time human personality passes through two great phases of increasing volitional dominance over the self and in the universe. The first phase is number one, the prefinaliter or God-seeking experience of augmenting the self-realization through a technique of identity expansion and actualization together with cosmic problem solving and consequent universe mastery. And then the second phase is the post-finaliter or God revealing experience. So the first is God seeking. The second is God revealing experience of the creative expansion of self-realization through revealing the supreme being of experience to the God-seeking intelligences who have not yet attained the divine levels of God-likeness. I'll stop there.
OK，一个曾是凡人的扬升中人类人格，在自我和宇宙中逐渐增加自愿的掌控，要经历两个重要阶段：准中举者或提高自我实现的寻求神的这类经验，这是通过身份扩展和实现的技巧，以及解决宇宙问题，随之掌握宇宙而获得的。第二，后中举者或自我实现创造性扩展的神启示的经验，这是通过将经验的至高存在者揭示给寻求神的心智而实现的。这心智尚未达到像神那样的神性境界。OK，
So what they're telling us here is that, hold on, an ascending. So as we're evolving, we're increasing our volitional dominance, which is our ability to, I would say, to control ourselves, to be more, to be, in our case, to be led by our thought adjusters, to let our thought adjusters guide us, which would make us more godlike. So as an ascending one-time human personality, that's us. After we die, we're no longer human, but we'll be a one-time, because we all start as human. So as we ascend, as we evolve through the universe, an ascending one-time human personality passes through two great phases of increasing volitional dominance. So in both phases, we'll be in this increasing volitional dominance is basically what they're defining as they're saying that's what evolution is. as we evolve. We could just make it very simple and say we become more godlike, but they're explaining it to us. They're saying, how do you do that? You do that by making decisions, by making choices, by learning to use your will to do God's will. That's what they're saying. There's going to be two great phases of our evolution.
进化的过程呢，就是逐渐增加资源的掌控啊，并且是运用自己的意志，你的意志来实现神的旨意，就这个就是一个进化的过程，养生中凡人的进化的过程。
So in these two great phases of our evolution, first we have to explain what you mortals like us can eventually, we all become, if we fuse with our thought adjusters and we continue to evolve, we all become finalators. And that's our goal, to be a finalator. That's a very high level of spiritual evolution.
对，就是跟向重生者融合到最后，就是那个进化到最后就成为那个终局者，这个是进化的非常高的阶段。
There is such a thing as the core of mortal finality. You can think of it like the Marine Corps or some enormous group of beings that have evolved all the way to paradise, and they've met God. Now they're finally they become a member of the core of mortal finality, and then they're called a finalator. That's our destination.
对，进化就凡人，经过进化所有的阶段，到最后到达天堂，然后成为凡人终局者团队的中心成员，然后这个是大概我们凡人能进化的最高的阶段。
So they're saying we become a finalator after we make it to paradise and actually come face to face in the presence of God.
跟前面意思一样，就是到达终局者团队，成为中心的成员，就可以跟神面对面。
So our goal right now, as a mortal, we're a pre-finalator. Our goal is to keep evolving until we finally meet God. Now that's going to be billions of years from now. It's a long, long journey.
这个进化过程是需要非常长的时间的，是一个很长的、漫长的旅程。
There are 1 billion worlds in Havona, which is the universe surrounding paradise, and we have to live on each one of those worlds before we even get to paradise. That's the central universe. That's after we go through this super universe.
哈瓦那中央宇宙有上亿万的星球，要每一个这个世界都要去过，然后才能跟神面对面。那更不用说这个超级宇宙了。
So now a lot of people have these spiritual experiences and they feel like they do meet God and they come face to face. Now, whether that's their thought adjuster or somehow a part of God from paradise is coming out and meeting people, I don't know. So I do know that a lot of people seem to meet God, and it doesn't seem to be the thought adjuster. It seems to be actual God of all the universes. So I'm actually very confused about how that happens, but it may just be the thought adjuster becoming visual and present to them.
对，有些人呢宣称自个儿跟神面对面见到神了那种灵性的体验，他也不太确定是他的信仰调整者视觉化了跟他们显现呢，还是那个与万有之父从天堂里出来跟他会面，他也不知道那些体验是什么意思。
You know it's real. You know these stories are real because it always changes their life completely.
知道那些故事是真实的，因为这些的体验往往彻底的改变了他们的人生。
And I'm just mentioning this because I don't want everyone to feel like we have to wait billions and billions of years before we meet God face to face. I'm saying there may be some ways to get a little glimpse of him along the way.
对，我不是想给大家一个误解，好像你要经过10000年之后才能跟神见面，你总是有跟这个终极实相一瞥的，在这个沿途当中。
Because a lot of people do.
的确很多人有这个一瞥的体验。
Now I think that if they have faith before they do, that's one thing. But if they don't have faith until they meet God, then I wouldn't want to be in that position because then you won't be an agendanter.
I don't understand.
Well, the whole point of an agendanter is a rare mortal because you're living on an isolated planet where there's been a rebellion, so you don't get to see higher beings, you don't get to see celestial beings, you don't get to live on a spiritual place. So and if you develop your faith like we here are trying to do, then we become agendantes, which is a very special category. You see without being shown.
对他，就说这个 agitator 是什么？是那些人，就是他们在那个隔离的星球上，这个凡人，进化，他们没有机会去接触，那个比较高的灵性的存有，然后呢，没有看到，但是又相信，是这样的。这样的就是在终局者团队当中有特别的地位给他们，就叫 agendanter， 他们名称也特别叫 agendanter。
So some of these people who are seeing God or meeting God in Jesus or God or Jesus, they don't have faith and they're on the wrong track and it saves their soul. So that's a good thing. But I think if that happens, they'll never be an agendanter. So they'll become a finaliter, but it's a different category. Agendanters are a special category. So if they already have faith and they see God, that's fine. But the thing that makes you an agendanter is to believe without seeing God or Jesus, to have such strong faith that you don't need to see God face to face. You let your faith grow so strong that you absolutely, people go to their death because they're believing in God and they've never seen God.
我知道他的意思。他就说那些在意象当中看到神看到耶稣，然后改变了信仰，相信的那个就不算 agendanter， 因为他们看到了才相信。那么那些没有这种意象当中看到，但是又有非常强的这个信仰去相信的，那些才能被标记为 agendanter。知道。
I'm just saying we all want to see God, and we don't want to wait 10 billion years to see God, but there's a great there's a great reward for those of us who can believe in God without seeing him. That's what I'm saying.
对，就是说那种，对那些没有眼见亲自体验，但是又相信神的这些人是有巨大的奖励的。
And we have our thought adjusters, so it's not like we don't have a very close connection to God.
那我们至少我们有思想调整者与我们同在，所以也不算是跟神完全隔绝的。
So they're saying that there's two great phases in our evolution. One is the pre-finaliter or God-seeking experience of augmenting the self-realization through a technique of identity expansion and actualization together with cosmic problem solving and consequent universe mastery. So before we meet God, this is billions of years ahead of us, we're going to be evolving, augmenting this self-realization. We're going to be, becoming more self-aware, becoming more, augmenting self-realization. That's knowledge and wisdom about ourselves and about the universe, of course, through a technique of identity expansion and actualization. These are all the things we've been talking about, how to unify our personality and that will, it's just evolution, right? Becoming more, becoming better, becoming wiser, becoming more spiritual, becoming more godlike, identity expansion and actualization together with cosmic problem solving and consequent universe mastery. So cosmic problem solving, we've been talking about becoming wiser through worship or through thinking here, through worship when we're spiritual beings. So they're just talking about the basic evolution and learning and becoming wiser and becoming more on the way to while we're seeking God, while we're waiting to find God, while we're getting closer and closer to God. That's the first phase.
他说这个经历2个重要阶段嘛，增加逐渐的自愿掌控的2个重要阶段，准中举者就是我们还没有1万年之后见到神之前那个阶段，就通过提高自我实现的寻求神的这类经验，通过身份扩展和实现的技巧，就变得更加明智啊，
So basically they're saying the second phase is post-finaliter. That's after we meet God and become finaliters. We're in the core of mortal finality. We're called a finaliter. Before that, we're seeking God and we're learning and we're just augmenting our self-realization. After that, we're revealing God to beings who are on their way to meeting God, to all the pre-finaliters. Now we're teachers. First we're learners, then we're teachers. First we're learning to be more godlike, and then we're showing others how to be more godlike. So the second phase is revealing God. After we meet God, it says we're revealing the supreme being of experience to the God-seeking intelligence who have not yet attained the divine levels of godlikeness. So they're saying we're revealing what we now are to beings who have not yet attained the divine levels of godlikeness. Well, we have attained the divine levels of godlikeness. After we meet God, we're very much like God. We're divine beings. Once we're at that point, we're God. We're like demigods. We're very, very high level personalities.
就是后中居者呢，就是你已经从这个寻求 神的这个经验当中，就是到了这个什么，就是可以展示，可以揭示启示神的这个阶段，然后你将这种经验呢，要揭示给寻求神的心智，就是你成为老师了啊，这是你的那时候的自我的实现的方式。
So you can say for the first 10 billion years, we're students, and then we meet God, and we become then we become gods. We're not gods like God, but divine beings, which are God compared to what we are now, we'll be gods. So very divine beings. Now we're revealing God. So first we're students, then we're teachers. First we're becoming more godlike. Then once we are godlike, we're revealing that. We're revealing our experience and our knowledge and our wisdom and our divinity to all of the beings who are now on their way up to meet God. The students, the God seekers. Now we're God revealers.
就是从学生变老师，从寻求神的就变成启示神的啊，就我们成为那个神圣的存有了。
And we do that by gaining experience. There's no substitute for experience. You can't become godlike just by worshiping or just by wanting it. You have to go through the experience.
对，你这是所有的过程都是经验，你不能说光单单通过敬拜来像神一样，你就是要通过经验。
You have to go through phase by phase by phase by phase by phase. You can never skip. There's no skipping any phase. There's no shortcuts to God. Nobody can take any shortcuts. Everyone has to go through the exact same process. Billions of years of studying and training and learning and experiencing. But it's fun. I mean, it'll be fun.
对，这些阶段也都是要进化的阶段，一个阶段一个阶段来，你不能够跳级，不能够有短路，捷径。这个过程呢，就是学习啊，经验的过程都是那个，
No,
对，
yeah.
不能跳级的。
No arthritis, no allergies, no one robbing your house, no dying cats. It'll be fine. I have to take a 1-minute break.
他要去休息一下，他就说，对，没有风湿病啊，没有过敏啊，没有人来抢你的房子啊。
琪琪，我今天特别的困，我要先撤了。下面要不找另外一位去读中文好吗？
好的，好的。休息吧。
好，谢谢，拜拜。但这个地方后中句者，我就是不太明白 revealing God。那我们以前那些很伟大的老师，难道他们已经是到达一个很高的阶段了吗？
对，他大概
到达后中举者了吗？
对，大概已经实现了跟神的同在嘛，所以他们就可以直接的像代表神一样，就进行一种启示性的工作，那种灵性导师，所谓扬升者。
先撤了，谢谢。好，拜拜。
好的。
Okay, I'm back. All right, so everyone got that? Okay. So
Yeah.
So that's the two big phases. I always call it student, then teacher. So now it says, I'm reading, descending personality, and I'll read to the end. Descending personalities attain analogous. Okay, we're ascending personalities. So now we're reading about descending personality. And Ricky, you can translate this before I read on. Now we're reading about descending personalities. which are the celestial beings who are made perfect by God, and then they experience everything through the universe. We're ascending. We're working our way up to God. They know God when they're created, and then they work their way all the way down to the lowest levels, and they gain their experience that way. So it's the opposite journey for descending personalities. They're not mortals. They're never mortal beings.
他是说我们凡人呢，扬升属于就是上升的、扬升的这个过程。沉降的人格呢，是他们是本来是灵性、神性的存有，要到低的这个层次去获得经验。所以那个下一段讲的沉降的人格是指的是这些。
Except for the Michael sons and the magisterial sons, they're the only descending beings who do incarnate in one life as a mortal being.
迈克尔造物之主、造物之神、造物之神，他们是要经过几次的变成那个，就是他们7次赠予，其中要有1次是变成凡人，就是他们是对，属于沉降的人格，对。
So now it says descending. So descending personalities, you just explained they're the ones that are created perfect and work their way down, right? You just explained that, right? Okay. Descending personalities attain analogous experiences through their various universe adventures as they seek for enlarged capacity for ascertaining and executing the divine wills of the supreme, ultimate, and absolute deities. And then I'll read the last paragraph. The material self, the ego entity of human identity, is dependent during the physical life on the continuing function of the material life vehicle, on the continued existence of the unbalanced equilibrium of energies and intellect, which on Urantia has been given the name life. But selfhood of survival value, selfhood that can transcend the experience of death, is only evolved by establishing a potential transfer of the seat of the identity of the evolving personality from the transient life vehicle, the material body, to the more enduring and immortal nature of the Urantia soul, and on beyond to those levels whereon the soul becomes infused with and eventually attains the status of spirit reality. This actual transfer from material association to Urantia identification is affected by the sincerity, persistence, and steadfastness of the God-seeking decisions of the human creature. Take it away, Shunli.
Oh, Shunli, was sleepy. She
Oh.
went to sleep, so I'm going to read. She
How
told me.
about Eric, maybe?
Is Eric still here? Eric, are you awake?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, 你来读这2段。
Okay. 沉降的人格获得类似经验，这是通过他们在宇宙中的各种冒险而获得的。他们寻求扩大能力，以认识和执行至高、终极和绝对神的神性意志。物质自我及人类身份的自我实体，在身体生命期间，依赖于物质生命载体连续的功能，依赖于能量和智力的不平衡的均衡持续存在。这在预览下被称为生命，但具有续存价值的自我性， 能够超越死亡经验的自我性。只有这样才能形成借力进化人格的身份位置的潜在转移。这种转移是以短暂的生命载体物质身体到灵质性灵魂的更持久和不朽的属性，进而超越到灵魂与灵性实相融合，乃至最终到达灵性实相境界的层次。这种从物质关联到灵质性认同的实际转移，是通过人类受造物真诚、持久而坚定地决定寻求神而实现的。Okay.
Okay, thank you. So the first little paragraph just explains that descending personalities attain analogous experience, right? Similar experiences as we do through their various universe adventures as they seek for enlarged capacity for ascertaining and exiting the divine will. So basically they're saying that descending personalities, the perfect beings of divine nature that God creates perfect, but they evolve, even though they start off as perfect, they're like the supreme being, the God of experience. They still evolve through experience, and they have they say through their various universe adventures. So they're having great universe adventures as they explore. They're born in a perfect world, in Havona, but for them it's great adventures to explore the less and less and less perfect domains until they get all the way down to the very level of human experience. For them it's a great adventure, and they learn to become more godlike, to execute the divine wills of the supreme, ultimate and absolute deities. They, even though they're perfect, they become more perfect, more and wiser and more divine as they explore the universes by descending from the highest to the lowest.
这个2.219段呢，就说那些完美的存有啊，神的存有，他们，就是有点类似神的至高者一样，就是他们也要通过经验的扩展来进行进化，进行这个宇宙的探险。他们虽然，出生在哈瓦那，就是中央宇宙，但是他们还要去探索作为不那么完美的存在的经验，所以就是往下沉降嘛，然后在沉降的层面慢慢的去学习、认识和执行至高终极和绝对神的神性意志。
So then the last paragraph, they're basically telling us how we evolve, how we can evolve, because it doesn't say we do, it says we can. It says the selfhood that can transcend the experience of death, right? So this paragraph is telling us that we start with the material self, that's us, human beings, the ego entity of human identity. We're not going to have egos on the next world. That's a human thing. The ego entity of human identity is dependent during the physical life on the continuing function of the material life vehicle. That's our material bodies, on the continued existence. I like the way they say of the unbalanced equilibrium of energies and intellect, which on Urantia has been given the name life. So what they're telling us is that in order for us to exist, and have what we call life here, they're really telling us it's not balanced here. The material life, here, let me on the
Yeah, that's very
energies
excellent.
and intellect. Yeah, energies and intellect. But then they're saying, but selfhood of survival can transcend, but we can transcend the experience of death. Now it doesn't say we will, it says we can. Is only evolved by establishing potential transfer of the seed of identity, evolving personality from the transit life to the more enduring and miraculous soul and beyond, whereon the soul becomes a spirit. Okay, their actual transfer to Urantia identity is affected. So they're saying the actual transfer from material life association to Urantia identification, which is the Urantia body is more enduring, more immortal. So they're saying the physical life is really imbalanced. It's kind of a crazy mixture of energies and intellect. But we can go to the Urantia world, which is a more enduring and more spiritual. And I'll let you translate that.
Yeah. OK， 这个物质自我啊，就是我们这个自我实体嘛，自我实体就是物质加上心智这两部分，然后它这个生命载体连续的功能在这个阴阳下被称为生命啊。它这个词用的非常好，能量和智力的不平衡的均衡，就是实际上我们这肉身这个肉物质身体这个能量和智力往往是不均衡的但是短暂的这个均衡，这么一个物质的生命的存在，是我们生命，就是我们生命其实并没有那么可靠。那么当通过死亡，就是转移到下一个阶段呢，是灵智体的阶段呢，我们的身体就是更结实、更不朽更有耐力。
I would say, are you done?
Yeah.
I would say that the most, I may be wrong, but right this moment, I would say, I may be right, I may be wrong, but it's certainly true that one of the most important words, I'd say maybe the most important word, but definitely one of the most important words in the Urantia book is the word decision.
他说他有可能错误，但是个人认为艺术当中一个很重要的一个词叫沉降，就是沉降的人格那个沉降。
We've just been reading about volition, the volitional experience, volition. Volition is choice, it's will. Making choices, making decisions is how you evolve. That's how you find God. That's how you become godlike. The book tells us that over and over and over again. That we determine who we are, where you go, what you become.
对，就是这个意志意志这个呢是有关乎这个你的自由意志你的决定你的选择呀，决定我们是谁，我们到哪里去，我们可以成为什么。
Okay. So if you make good decisions, things may not go your way. Your life may not be perfect. You may make all kinds of mistakes, but if you make good decisions, which can mean after you make a mistake and you decide to be better or you decide to learn from it, as long as you keep making good decisions, you will find God and eventually you will be like God.
Yeah. 你可能不完美，你可能犯错误，但是呢，你只要好一些，相当于有上进心嘛。对，你就是有句定义要找到神，那么最终你一定会向神。
if you do nothing else right now, but just have one little prayer that says, Dear God, help me make good decisions. That's all you have to do. And you'll be okay. You'll find God, you'll meet God, you will evolve. You can start with, if you just start there, you'll be okay.
对，他就是这给一个像一个实修的小秘诀一样。而从今往后，你就是你别的什么都不做，但是呢，你就给一个小小的祷告，你说啊，是那个帮助我，那个做好的决定。那么你就是相当于你往内里的这样一个祷告，就是帮助我做正确的决定哈，就这么一个祷告就可以帮助你这个找到神啊，跟神相会啊，然后活得像神一样。
They're saying that this first life is kind of an unbalanced mess of energy, intellectual and chemical and all kind. Here it's a little, we're kind of a mess here. It's not that easy. It's not that spiritual. It's, we're just kind of going to get through this. But they're saying we may not get to the Urantia world, but if we do, that world is more enduring. It's more spiritual, and the more enduring, immortal nature of the Urantia soul, and on beyond to those levels where the soul becomes infused with and eventually attains the status of spirit reality. On the Urantia world, we most likely will fuse with our adjuster. Some people don't, but there's a very good chance we will. Here on this world, most people won't get to the Urantia world. But once we get there, we most likely will fuse with our adjuster. And when we fuse, we will get to the spiritual worlds. So the big hurdle, the big step is when we leave this world, do we go to the Urantia world? And after Ricky translates this, I will tell you exactly how we do that.
对，从这个物质界转移到那个灵智界是一个很大的一个坎儿啊，因为在物质界就是我们各个方面就是其实很不平衡的物质啊，灵性啊、心智啊各个方面很难达到一种平衡，并且很多的人，大部分人是没有办法达到下一个阶段的，就是不能，基本上很多人就不会从物质界被转移到那个灵智界，而如果我们真正的到达了灵智界，我们就有很大的可能就是跟那个思想调整者融合，就是往那个灵性去进化，就更有保障嘛，对呀，就是相当于一个拿到一个永恒身份了，永久居民的一样的。
So it is our we've just been reading about personality. It is our personality that will survive. Our personality will transit from this material body to the Urantia soul, to our Urantia body and our Urantia soul. And I'll tell you how to do that in 1 minute.
对，人格续存呢，就是转移到灵智界，就有那个灵智性的灵魂和身体。
And that's the last sentence tells us this actual transfer from material association, that's our material bodies, to Urantia identification, that's when we become Urantia beings, is affected, is done by the sincerity, persistence, and steadfastness of the God-seeking decisions of the human creature. That's how we get there. We make sincere decisions. We persist, we're steadfast. That means we don't give up. And we're looking for God. We don't have to find God. We just have to look for God.
怎么样达到下一个灵性进化的阶段呢？就是这个最后一句那个途径，就是这种从物质关联到灵智性认同的实际转移，是通过人类受造物真诚的、持久的、坚定的决定寻求神而实现的。就是在我们这样一个决定、一个寻求神的这么一个决定，就可以保证我们能够实现这样的实际的转移。
So here's a good prayer. Dear God, let me be honest. Help me to be honest and sincere and never give up while I search for God, while I look for you, while I try to get closer to you. Help me make good decisions, honest decisions, and help me to never give up. That'll get you there. There's your ticket.
对，可以有这样一个小小的祷告，神啊，让我更那个真诚的，寻求你，从来就不要那个放弃，然后跟你变得越来越近，然后帮助我，做这样的决定，永远不放弃的这样的一种决定，坚持不懈，持之以恒的寻求你的意愿。
So they're saying sincerity, that's honesty.
Sincerity 这个真诚的，就是诚实的意思。
Persistence, that's patience and never giving up.
Persistent 就是永远不放弃，有耐心、有耐力的。
Steadfastness, that means nothing can shake you. You're not going to be, no one's going to convince you to get off the path. You're staying on it. You've made up your mind. You're sticking to it. That's what steadfastness is.
Steadfast 的意思是没有什么东西能动摇你，你就站在上面，你就坚持这一个。
And you're making God-seeking decisions. So it's not so easy to be sincere, because the easiest person to lie to is yourself.
其实并没有那么容易真诚，因为我们经常对自己撒谎的。
But being honest is really, I think honesty is the key to making good decisions. If you make honest decisions, if you don't lie to yourself, you'll make good decisions.
对，那个如果你对自己诚实的话，你就不会对自己撒谎，你就容易做出好的决定。
And I've said this many times before, and I'm sure I'll say it many times again, that making the right decision can be very, very difficult. It's very often the hard decision is not always, but very often the hard decision is the right decision.
正确的决定，它是有可能是很困难的，很有挑战性的去做出的。
So it's hard. It's hard because until you make, it's very, very, very crazy, but it's hard because right up until the moment you make the decision, you don't know which decision is the right one. That's why it's hard. You don't know what to do.
对，往往直到你做了决定之后，你才知道什么是正确的决定。
And that's because you're not being completely honest with, if you were 100% honest, or maybe sometimes it's a little wisdom too, then you would know. But we don't know because we're not 100% honest usually, and we're not very wise. So it's hard for us to know which is the right decision Sometimes we do know.
所以，实际上大部分时间我们没有那么明智，不知道什么是正确的决定，尤其是如果我们不对自己完全的诚实。
But the minute, here's the crazy part, the minute you make the right decision, you know it. The minute you make it, you feel a huge relief. A huge burden has been lifted off your shoulders.
但是当你这个做了正确的决定的瞬间，你觉得一个重大的一个负担挪去了，你知道这个是个正确的决定。
You never have any doubts, or very rarely do you have any doubts once you make that right decision.
对，往往没有任何的疑问，你做了正确的决定。
You're flooded. All of a sudden, you have total clarity.
对，一下子好像事情就变得很明朗了。
Everything makes sense.
对，一切都顺理成章了。
Even though you were completely confused before you made the decision.
虽然在这之前你还是糊里糊涂的。
So that's how you know you made the right decision.
这样的话你就知道你做了正确的决定。
When you make the wrong decision, you don't feel good afterwards, and what you do is you start lying to yourself and lying to people and trying to convince yourself and other people you made the right decision. You start, I don't know what you call it in Chinese, but we call it rationalizing. You start rationalizing, making excuses, trying to convince yourself. You don't have to do that when you make the right decision. You don't have to rationalize anything. You just know it. You feel good.
但是你要是做了不正确的决定呢，你就是做了决定之后呢，你就开始对自己、对别人撒谎，开始找理由，然后论证你自己的决定是对。
So that's how you know you made the right decision.
对，这是他的方式，怎么样判断你是否做了正确的决定？
So Eric, you're very quiet. He's might
Yeah,
get
because I think I missed I did not finish the last session, so I'm not quite sure about what is the self, the topic, right, for this section, the self or the selfhood. Is selfhood same as the personality?
no. No, this whole section has been about personality. It's been pretty difficult. It's pretty hard to explain personality, but it's not quite, it's very similar to the selfhood. I would say it's the strongest part of the self, but the selfhood is your identity, and your identity, yourself, is made of many different components, and personality is just one of them. For example, your thought adjuster is part of yourself, but it's not part of your personality. That's your thought adjuster. Your personality is completely separate from your thought adjuster.
Okay, so personality is part of the self.
Yes, and your thought adjuster is part of yourself.
Okay.
Your selfhood is your whole identity. Your physical body is part of yourself. It's not part of your personality.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So your self is going to change. On the Urantia world, your self will be your Urantia body. Your thought adjuster may be fused, maybe not. Your soul. On the physical world, your self is your physical body, your thought adjuster, your mind, which you don't have the same mind on the Urantia world. So your self changes. The personality never changes. The thought adjuster never changes. The self changes.
Okay.
这个艾瑞克就问那个，因为他前面一节没有听，他就说这个两个概念是不是自我性就是个人格？他说 海底说不是的，那个自我性它是一个身份的概念，有很多的成分，你的身啊、心呢、心智啊、思想调整者啊，都是你自我性的一部分。但是，人格它是不变的，你的自我性在物质界可能是你的物质，你物质体的部分是物质体，然后你的自我性在灵智性世界就是你的灵智体加上你的灵智性心智啊，这样思想调整者，而在这个当中不变的是那个人格，人格的部分是不变的，不管是你在物质界还是在灵智界的自我性当中，人格都是不变的。所以人格是自我性的一个部分。
It's like
因为
it's like a lot of human beings. A lot of human beings think that the physical body is who they are. That's them. That's their self. And the Urantia book is saying, "Oh no, the physical body is just one part of you. You have a soul. You have a thought adjuster. You have a personality. These are all completely separate." It's even talking on. We just read about master tissues. Is it supreme ideas, supreme motives, supreme goals? Those aren't part of your physical self. So we have many different parts of us.
至高目标啊，这些什么灵魂啊，这都是自我的一部分。不光是一般人讲的自我，好像就是这个身体是自我，但是身体不能代表自我。
因为我们中文这个 ego 我们也翻自我，然后这个 self 也是自我，所以变成说这两个我们必须要把它区分出来。So ego is part of the self too, right?
Yeah, but it says here, absolutely, but it says here the material self, the ego entity of human identity, is dependent during the physical life on the continuing function of the material life vehicle. I don't think that the ego entity necessarily goes to the Marancha, becomes part of the Marancha self. It doesn't say, but it's saying that we have a human identity dependent on our physical life, but that selfhood of survival of
I think material self consists of material body and material mind 这两部分，所以他下面提到 and then he remind the energy and the intellect the imbalance.
well,
So that in material self consists of a physical body and physical mind.
I mean, if our self is dependent on the physical body, but the material life vehicle is only part of our self here, because a lot parts of ourself have survival value and will then become part of our Marancha self.
对 material 就是你的自我性是，而且那个物质性自我只是自我的一部分。对，但是不是那种能续存到下一个生命阶段的物质性自我是不能够存续到下一个阶段的，是自我性其他的部分，像灵魂啊、像调整者啊这些才能够，还有人格呀，这些是能够续存到下个阶段。
See, it says right here, but selfhood of survival value, selfhood that can transcend the experience of death. And then they tell us how to do that by making these good decisions, becoming more, being led by our thought adjusters. But some parts of the self we leave behind. Others have survival value and become part of our Marancha self. But the personality our personality will always be with us, no matter what kind of body we have, no matter what kind of spirit we are.
就是自我性的一部分留在后边，另外一部分是可以带到下一个世界有续存的价值的那个人格这一部分，它是总是跟我们同在的，不管我们这个是在物质界还是在灵性界。
And our thought adjusters too. The same thought adjuster that's with us now will be with us for, well, will actually become part of us. Right now it's a potential part of us, but it will be part of us. We'll be one with it. It will be absolutely part of us.
对，思想调整者呢，也是有这种永久性的那个，他就是在现在我们物质体的时候，他是就是有这个潜在的跟我们同在的这个，因为他不是他还是对我们可以听可以不听他们，到下一个阶段就是跟他合一了嘛，他就是我们的自我性的一部分。
I think that you can keep recording for anyone who wants to keep listening, because we can talk a little bit, but I think we should start reading section 3 next time, because it's pretty late in China, and we've already lost 1 or 2 people, so I think it makes more sense to we can talk now, but
Yeah, I think on this topic, I want to have some more clarification. So basically, you are saying that the selfhood, I can say from the Urantia to the paradise, the selfhood is always there. Just the component inside the selfhood may change.
Yes, because if you think of it like your identity, like yourself is your identity. Yes, you always have a self, you always have an identity, because you'll always have more than one component. You won't just be a personality. You'll have, I mean, they're saying here supreme goals, supreme motives, supreme ideas. I don't know if those are part of your personality or not, but they're acting like they're separate. But even when you're a spiritual being, you'll have some kind of spiritual body. It's not a material body, but it is a body. You will be able to, fly around, and other spiritual beings will see you. So that's not your personality. So yes, you'll always have some kind of self, which is a whole identity.
Okay, that's the something may leave behind when you